welcome back to Yarn to Table. My name is Celeste and this is a show about my knitting life. It's been 2 weeks since we've sat down and had a proper chat, and I have 2 finished objects for you and 2 brand new cast-ons, so there's lots to talk about. If you're not aware, I have been doing Vlogtobers, so there are plenty of vlogs every day if you're interested in seeing a bit more of what's going on with my knitting and other things in my life as well. And I will talk a tiny bit more about the Vlogtober process and some recommendations for other knitters doing Vlogtober at the end of the episode in the chit chat segment. So if this is your first time watching me, or if you just haven't joined the Ravelry group yet, I do want to let you know that there are show notes for every episode in a group that we have on Ravelry, which is linked below in the doobly-doo here on YouTube. You can also find it by searching for Yarn to Table on Ravelry under groups. And that is where you're going to find, as I said, show notes for every episode. It's also where you're going to find any information about knit-alongs and giveaways. There is an Introduce Yourself thread and an Ask Me Anything thread, and I would love for all of you to check it out and participate in whatever way is interesting to you. And if you do hear some background noise, some cars and things like that, children playing, I have the windows open today because it's just a little bit warm today. The weather's been all over the place, cold and then warm, but yeah, so I have the windows open, so sound may not be absolutely ideal today. Sorry about that. Let's see. Oh, so I have a couple announcements. I guess I already mentioned Vlogtober. The other thing is, as I mentioned, it's been 2 weeks since we've had a proper episode. And I do think that, at least for the time being, I'd like to move to more of a bi-weekly schedule instead of weekly for a couple reasons. So one is I want to have as much content for you guys as possible. You know, I don't like it when we check in on my knitting and I feel like all I have to show you is, oh, I've done a few rows on this project and I've already really talked in detail about this project. That's not interesting for anyone. And I don't want to feel the pressure to like be knitting faster or I don't know, like to cast on new things or something just so that I have something to show you guys. Like sometimes as the weekend's approaching and I feel like what I have to show isn't that interesting, it'll make me think, well, maybe I should cast on something small so that I have something to show, and I just don't really want that to be leading my decisions, especially since, you know, knitting is not something that I can dedicate all that much time to because I have a busy life as well, which is the other reason that I think that bi-weekly is going to work out better. Right now, as you'll see if you've been watching Vlogtober, things are really crazy in my life. I work long hours and I go to school. So it's just a lot, and I would love to sit here and chat with you guys every week, but this other stuff in my life, it cuts into my knitting time, which means I don't feel like I'm being as productive as I was when a 1-week schedule made sense. And then obviously filming and editing and setting up to film and stuff takes up extra time as well. And so, you know, weekends are my only time to get big chunks of schoolwork done. It's my only time mostly to spend with my husband and things like that. So I think bi-weekly is going to be great. I know there are a ton of other wonderful podcasts out there, so I don't think you guys should miss me too much while you're waiting for the next episode to come out. I mean, I imagine some people have trouble keeping up with a weekly schedule as it is just with watching. So I think that's going to work out well, and we'll play it by ear from there, whether the schedule ever comes back to weekly or just as it makes sense. Oh, and now there's a bunch of birds outside. Today I'm drinking Teavana. This is citrus lavender sage, and I'm having it unsweetened and warm, and it is just absolutely fragrant and delightful. Wow, they're really loud out there. Nice little nature soundtrack in the background for us. Okay, so let's jump into finished objects. As I said, I have 2 for you. The first is something I have been working on for the Jinx and Vine knit along, which is running through the end of the month. And this is the Marled Magic shawl by Stephen West. This, let me actually, yeah, I'll start with this then. This is the end of it. This is the portion that I knit most recently, section 6. And then we're getting into the parts that you guys have seen. Here, you haven't seen this yet, the braid that I made with all of those ends that were left out. And the tassel. And this side. And I have just taken finished objects photos so you can see what this looks like on and what the entire thing looks like. And those should be up on Ravelry by the time this goes live. Oh, which I didn't mention, on Ravelry you can find me as Celeste Full. That is also how you can find me on Instagram. And you'll see lots of photos of what I'm doing in my knitting life and a little bit of extra life stuff on Instagram. And on Ravelry, you'll find updated project pages for everything. So if you go to the Marled Magic project page on Ravelry, you can find full photos of my Marled Magic. So anyway, this was a ton of fun, as I mentioned before. It's extremely outside my comfort zone. I still don't know how much actual wear in the real world I'm going to get out of it, just because I tend to wear more minimal things and not a ton of color, not a ton of craziness, and this is obviously very patchworky, which I love, but you know, I think it might be more of a comfy wrap up around yourself around the house kind of thing. But I do love it, and what I really loved was making it. Someone said, I think it might have been Tommy from Squirrel Pie Productions, said that these Stephen West patterns that have different sections like this are so nice because you can knit monogamously on one project, but you feel like you're knitting on all these different projects because every section is something totally different. And I thought that was such a great way to describe it. Like, this section was brioche. I actually edited it, altered it to be 2-color brioche. And the pattern is just 1 color. You have seed stitch, garter stitch, this eyelet thing, more garter and seed stitch, and of course this lovely I-cord bind off, which seems like it's going to be tedious, but it actually went a lot faster than I thought it would, probably because of the gauge you're working at. So this whole thing is done by marling 2 fingering weight yarns together, and so you're knitting it at more of a worsted weight gauge. But I found the I-cord to be quite enjoyable to knit. I did have some issues, so with the I-cord bind off, there are certain portions of the, not bind off, but border, the I-cord border. There are certain portions, like this edge was one, where he has you increasing as you're doing the I-cord so that it doesn't sort of get too tight. And there were some places where I felt I needed to increase more than what was given in the pattern. So I actually had to rip back the I-cord on this section because the amount that he had me increase did not end up being enough for me. It's possible that it's something to do with the way that I altered this to be 2-color brioche. It doesn't seem like that should affect it, but because I did alter this section and this was where I had the most trouble and had to actually rip back the I-cord, I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume that might have had something to do with it. So there's that. The other big thing that I did since I talked to you guys about it was this finishing, which is the optional French braid here that you do with all these long ends. And as I mentioned before, I accidentally didn't leave my ends long enough, so I went in and I magic knotted more yarn to them, which means there are a couple places where you can kind of see the magic knot, which is like not the best, but it's mostly invisible. And that was fun to do and just a nice little fun detail. And then, so I used this mohair at the very end of my last section, and I showed this on Vlogtober. I timed it to where I ended up with the tiniest little piece of mohair left over, And that was all I had left. And then I ended up using that mohair for my little tassel, which I think is just absolutely perfect. So all the ends are from what was French braided, which came from this section. And then the tie around them is just that leftover mohair that I had, which, I'm on focus, which I just think looks really, really cute. It just adds some fun texture there. So this is a lovely textural piece. It is an extremely fun process knit. And I do love the product. I just, I don't find it to be a particularly practical product, but you know, it's the kind of thing that I definitely like to just sort of pull over my shoulders on a chilly evening, hanging out around the house. And I have worn it out once since I made it, and you know, depending on my mood, I might wear it out more. So, quite enjoyable for me. I'm not going to wear it right now though because it's a little warm. I feel like my face is so red, and that's probably why. So, anything else I wanted to say about this, or forever hold my peace? If you haven't seen me talk about it before, I will just say that my theme with this was Harry Potter, so all of the yarn that I used was Harry Potter themed, because I have a lot of Harry Potter yarn, or I did have a lot of Harry Potter yarn. I had a bunch from Nora George, a little from Little Bean Loves, and a bunch of club yarn from Homespun House. And so I really love the fact that this is just a big giant marled magic that is Harry Potter themed. So yeah, lovely little Halloween project. Nice and magical. Okay, so let me show you my next finished object. Next up is my pair of socks, my Candy Apple socks. So these were done with a sock set from Nora George called Candy Apple. And the main color is this beautiful speckled orange with these rusty reds and some lime green, nice peachy spots and darker orange spots. And then the contrasting is this sour apple green, which also picks up on these notes throughout the sock. And what I did, just pick up one so I can show you, is I added this little bit of stranded work to fade the contrast color into the main color. And then I did the same thing at the toe. And then I also did this 2-color heel using the contrast. So it's solid here for the turn, but for the flap, I did 2 colors, and they just blend beautifully together in a kind of watercolor effect, because the sour apple color shows up in speckles throughout this as well. So instead of being a stark contrast, it just gives this sort of wash of color in the same way that it has here and down here. And I just think it's a lot of fun. So I was inspired to do a little bit of stranded to lead into the color work, or to lead into the contrast cuff and toe. I was inspired by a photo I saw of a project that Pow of Pow Knits was doing on Instagram. I don't remember if he did a 2-color heel or not, but so Pow gets the credit for my inspiration on that one, and then I just kind of made it up as I went along. I did tell you guys, so this was the second sock, and as you can see, it's plenty stretchy up here. The first sock, the stranded work is a little bit tight. I came back in and I pulled on, you know, where my salvage end was, and I tried to give it as much extra stretch as I could, and I can get it over my heel and everything, but it does not, it's still a little bit tight. It doesn't fit quite as comfortably as the second one. The second one I just made sure to do that stranded work more loosely, and I was totally fine. So these were my sort of seasonal themed socks for September, getting into fall, getting excited about it. I didn't start them until the middle of September, and then I finished them earlier this week So now I have a new pair of socks for October, which I will show you in a minute. But I finished these while I was recording Return to Stars Hollow. I typically work on my Pop-Tarts and coffee. I always try to say Pop-Tarts and happiness, and I don't know where that comes from, except that coffee equals happiness. Anyway, I normally work on my Pop-Tarts and coffee socks during Return to Stars Hollow recording sessions, but I was so close to finishing this when I sat down to record this week that I really just wanted to finish it, so I did. So I have not worked on the Pop-Tarts and coffee, so they won't be making an appearance. But yeah, 2 FOs and 2 new cast-ons. So the first one I teased, it's a new pair of socks. Always got to have some vanilla socks going. And they're in the same incredible Homero Fiber Co bag that I'm just so in love with. This is called the Wielder of Needles. And last I checked, I think she actually had some on her site, which I don't know how that happened, but they might actually be available, so get over there if you want one. Okay, so how am I going to do this? Let me show you first. This is what I'm knitting. This is self-striping yarn from Jinx Yarn in the Jack and Sally colorway, which is inspired by The Nightmare Before Christmas. So the colors are sort of inspired by those 2 characters. And then I'm using this for contrast heels, toes, and cuffs, and it is just some Knit Picks Stroll in the colorway Pumpkin. So these are kind of Halloween / leading into Christmas socks because that's a Halloween and a Christmas movie. And pumpkin, although everyone associates it with Halloween, traditionally pumpkin pie is something we eat in the States on Christmas, as well as on Thanksgiving. So I really feel like pumpkin is also something that like extends throughout all of the fall holidays and into Christmas. So these are like my lovely Halloween into Christmas socks, which works out well because I'm probably not going to finish them before Halloween, given that I just started them. Although I have made quite good progress. Let me show you this. Already done with the heel. Now, just look how spectacular this yarn is. I can't say enough good things about this. I knew Jinx yarn was beautiful in photographs, but in person, it's really even more beautiful. The speckling in those blue sections is spectacular. Ah, just love it. So, I cast on this cuff earlier this week when we went to a light festival, which is in Vlogtober, and if you haven't seen that episode, it's called Festival of Lights. I think it's Vlogtober Day 12. You should definitely watch it. It has fewer views than some of the other episodes around it that have titles directly related to knitting, which I guess that's why more people would watch those. But you should definitely check it out because everyone who saw it told me it was like really cool, and I think it's really cool. It has a lot of footage from this really interesting light festival that we have here in Cincinnati. So they've got like cool light shows going on in front of like big city murals that like play around with the pictures in the murals, and a parade and all kinds of cool stuff. But anyway, so I worked on this cuff a little bit while we were waiting for the parade to start, and then I sat down the next day and I watched Nightmare Before Christmas as well as a few other things, and I just knit and blew past the heel. Self-striping yarn totally knits itself, as everyone says, and I think the more beautiful it is, the faster it knits itself, because I've knit a lot with Felici, and that didn't knit itself as fast as this did, because this was just mesmerizing. And I don't know, sometimes beautiful yarn slows me down because I keep stopping to look at it, which I honestly do. And other times with self-striping, it's like I want to knit more and more and more to see what the whole thing looks like. So these are like the Sally sections, right? And then these are the Jack sections. And it was interesting because I knit on this watching the movie, and I actually was knitting a Jack section during Jack's lament and a Sally section during Sally's lament, which I thought was pretty cool. I think those are what the songs are called. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, it definitely was like a nice, full, immersive knitting experience. I'm such a nerd. I love to knit like themed yarn while I watch the thing that it's themed after or whatever. I'm just, nerdy knitting is the best. So anyway, I'm completely in love with this. I'm excited to get some more in on it. Normally my vanilla socks, I don't really sit down with and knit a big section at once the way I did. It's more just like my on-the-go project, but I was just so excited to see this yarn knit up, and I wanted to watch that movie, so that's why I did that. So from now on, it might be a little bit more slow going, I don't know. But also I don't have a ton of whips right now, so sometimes I might just be in the mood to sit down with this and knit on it. So, you know, we'll see. But anyway, that's that for now. That's my adorable little s'mores progress keeper, which I think looks really cute on it. And I love them. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say, I mentioned this in Vlogtober, but I'll let you guys know too. You may notice that this is a much longer cuff than I normally do. So here's my candy apple socks. They only have a 10-row twisted rib cuff. And by comparison, these have a 24-row cuff. So the reason for that is I wanted to experiment with a longer cuff because obviously a longer cuff is more practical. It's going to help your socks stay up. I personally like the look of a shorter cuff. Not that I don't like this. It's just, you know, not what I would necessarily choose. So I really wanted to experiment though and see if a longer cuff feels like it's a better fit, and if so, if that feels like it's worth it. So I've just never really done a super long cuff before, and I figured I would try it. I have plenty of this yarn, so I didn't have to worry about running out. And I did this huge 24-inch cuff, 24 round cuff, because a full repeat of the stripes is about 24 rounds, and so it felt like that would balance well in terms of the proportions of the sock. So that's that. And my last whip, which is also a new cast on, is living in my Hana Lisa bag. And that is something I have finally cast on after swatching and kind of waiting around, not having the right needles free. And boy, am I excited about it. So I just cast this on yesterday. And last night I just knit and knit and knit on it. And I've completed the entire yoke now. Woo. So excited. Okay, so this is the Pavement by Vera Valimaki. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous raglan sleeve pullover. I am knitting it out of Stranded Dye Works in the colorway Shiner. And I started here at the collar. The collar is garter stitch, and there's also going to be garter stitch trim on the sleeves and along the hem, which you guys already know that I love garter stitch as a detail on stockinette. I just think it's so beautiful. So here's where I started here in the back, and this is something really interesting about the pattern. You can see there, it's not really a seam, but it almost looks like one. That's what happens when you do garter in the round. They don't exactly line up. So she positions that at the back of the neck, and she has you do this short row shaping so that the back collar, as you can see, is that thick, and the front collar substantially thinner. You see that? And that helps it sit better on the back of your neck. Just this whole thing is very well thought out, very beautifully written and easy to follow. The other thing that's different that I haven't done before. See the raglan shaping? Do you see how dramatically it goes out? It's going out at a much faster rate than it's going down, right? And it has this really beautiful clean line where the increases are happening. And here you can see this yoke. Here are the sleeves, here and here, right? And then the front and the back, okay? On raglans that I've done a lot of times, the sleeves and the front and the back are sort of equal sizes. Like it's divided in 4 basically. But here, all the increases take place on the front and the back, and the sleeves just shoot straight out. They actually don't increase at all. They stay the same width. So you have, instead of these raglan seams that are going down and out like this and creating roughly 4 sections, front, side, and back, you have raglan shaping going more like this. The sleeve sections are staying smaller and the front and back are going wider, which gives it a really beautiful look. And I think that it's going to give it a different fit, which I think might fix some of the problems that some people have with the way that raglans fit on the shoulders. It's just a less simplistic way of shaping it, but it's no more difficult to do as a knitter. It's just a different way of thinking about the proportions as a designer. And you might think, well, that's not enough stitches for the sleeve, but what she does is she has you cast on. So here's where I put them on a stitch holder, my new little stitch holder that I showed you guys, and these are coming in handy already. So I've already split for the body right here, and this is everything that you recast on for the sleeve. So you recast on just as many stitches as you have at the top here. And so the raglan happens, you know, like this, but a lot of raglans that go straight down like this, they end almost near your armpit, and you only have to cast on a few more stitches. This one is ending up here and you're casting on a bunch more stitches. So it's really just changing the angle and the space of that raglan seam. And if you look at the photos of the finished projects, you know, or even at just the shape of this here, you can see, I mean, I really like the look of that. I like how the angle of the raglan is. And then, like I said, it has this incredibly sharp, beautiful line there. And that's because you actually increase on every single row instead of every other row. So you get this nice sharp line instead of having increases that kind of blend into the fabric, which I've seen done before. So I am just through the yoke, but I feel like the design of this is really, really good. I've tried it on over my head. It's fitting really well. Everything's laying nicely. The fabric that I'm getting is beautiful. The gauge. Oh, another beautiful insight. So she has you do the collar in a much smaller needle size to give like this dense, sturdy collar that helps everything stay pulled up instead of getting like too big and, you know, bacony collar situation. It helps everything lay nicely. And it makes the garter stitch look really nice because it looks really good in a tighter gauge. So this stockinette is actually, she calls for size US 7 needles, which I think is a 4.5 millimeter. I'm using size US 6, which I know is a 4 millimeter. I usually have to size down. So US 6 is what I would typically use for like a worsted weight to get a more dense gauge. This, although it's not too lacy, I think it looks really nice, is kind of a looser gauge. For, you know, like a 6 for a fingering weight, I might typically use like a 4 for a fingering weight. If I were knitting sock gauge, I would be using a 1 with a fingering weight. So a 6 is a fairly large needle. But for this collar, I actually used a 1.5. She called for a 2.5, but I sized down again. And so going from a US 1.5, which is a 2.5 millimeter, to a US 6, which is a 4mm, is a pretty dramatic change. And it really, really helps the collar to be just like a different fabric, a more reinforced, thicker, denser, more stable fabric than the rest of the garment, which is another just really, really smart thing about this design. So I absolutely am loving this. I think it's going to be so much fun to wear. This is something where I know it looks like I've knit a lot on it, and I do feel like I've accomplished a lot. But the yarn is slowing me down because I am stopping to admire it. That is definitely happening here. Every so often I stop and I go, oh my gosh, I can see this sweater appearing in front of me, and it's so beautiful. It's exactly how I pictured it in my head. I don't know how you are, but for me, a lot of times I will picture a project, and when I actually knit the project, it isn't looking exactly the way that I pictured it in my head. But this is exactly how I wanted it, exactly. So I'm just very happy. I picked up this yarn at House of Yarn in Nashville when we were there in August. If you're interested in our August vlog, that's Vlogust part 3 on the channel. You can see inside House of Yarn and some other stuff we got up to in Nashville. We went down for the eclipse. So I bought this there, and I bought it with the pavement in mind. And I just thought the yarn and the pattern were so perfect for each other. And I've just had it in my head exactly what it was going to look like. And now that I'm finally 2 months later seeing it appear, and it does look that way, it's just incredibly rewarding. So I think I'm going to be knitting on this pretty monogamously just because I'm so excited to see it come to life. Now that I'm on the body, there's not any waist shaping or anything, so it's going to be about 100 plain rows. Definitely going to get into that black hole territory. But it also means that it's a great on-the-go project. So now, with this and the sock and my other whip, which I haven't worked on this last couple weeks, so I'm not showing you, but the Ebo, which is also in the body, the stockinette body, although it does at least have some waist shaping that I have to keep track of. Everything that I'm working on now is super, super mindless vanilla stuff, which is nice because I have a lot of other stuff going on in my head, and it definitely helps me relax. But I am wondering how long that's going to last before I'm starting to itch to cast on something more complicated. Or possibly what I should do is, if I want something more complicated, I should dig out one of my hibernating projects, because I do still have the Oracle hibernating, which is lace and brioche. And I also have some hibernating mittens that you guys probably don't even know about because they've been hibernating since before I started the podcast in December. And they're color work. So I think I'm going to try to be strong, stay with these whips that I have, and then if I'm feeling that I want something more complicated, I'll pull out something hibernating. I think that's what I'm going to try to do. I did try to start that vintage prim hat, which is a brioche and garter stitch hat by Andrew Mowry. And you'll know if you watch Vlogtober that I could not make the gauge work with my yarn, so that's just going to be on the back burner for a while. I would like to make that hat sometime, but it's not a priority at the moment because I don't really know what yarn I would make it with. I'm sure I could find something in my stash if I really, really wanted to make it right now, but it's just not a priority. So, yeah, there's that if you were wondering. And, you know, I might just be on a really simple knitting kick for a while. I definitely feel like all the sweaters and all the socks right now. That's all I want to knit. I have my queue set up on Ravelry with everything that I want to knit soon, and it's just sweaters and scarves, or sweaters and socks as far as the eye can see. There's a few shawls and stuff that I want to knit sometime soon as well, but so just S things, I guess. Things that start with S. That's all I want to knit. But I I want to be a sweater knitter. Like, I get more excited about sweaters, and sometimes I think it's easy to postpone them and cast on things that are easier to make, that you don't need a gauge for, a gauge swatch, you know, that you don't need a sweater's quantity of yarn for. But sometimes I feel like in all the time that I spend working on fun little projects, I could be knitting sweaters. Like, I really enjoyed the Marled Magic. I don't have any regrets about working on that by any means. But with the amount of time and yarn that I put into it, I could almost have a sweater. And so it kind of makes you think, you know, sometimes a shawl feels like, oh, I'll just do that shawl. And it can be easy to feel that way because it's easy to go to your stash, for example, and take like 2 different or 3 different skeins of yarn and knit like a 2-color or 3-color shawl that you didn't have any plans for, and you didn't buy yarn specifically for it, and you don't have to gauge swatch, and it just feels like, well, I'll just do this, like just throw that onto the pile of whips. But when it comes down to it, some of those shawls are using almost as much yardage or as much yardage as a sweater would. And yet, I think we can be so much more hesitant with sweaters. We feel like, you know, they need to take a lot more planning and finding the right yarn and doing the gauge swatch and everything. And so it makes us hesitate. And I guess what I'm saying is, sorry, my lighting is all jacked up right now. I waited till too late in the day to record again. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm trying to get better. So now I have like the light of my computer, which is shining on my face, which is not super great. But then if it goes away, I feel like I'm way too dark. So I apologize. I feel kind of bad about the lighting situation right now, but not anything I can do about it except possibly buy some professional lights at some point. Anyway, what the heck was I saying? I guess I was just rambling about sweaters and how I want to knit more of them. So I'm going to try to prioritize that more now and in the new year. Actually, when I look back on what I've knit this year, I'm pretty impressed by how many sweaters I have knit. It's actually a lot. And I think so I knit the Kobo for myself, the Miette for my friend. I knit I'm not going to try to think of all their names, but I knit that Quince & Co. one with the owl for myself, and then I knit the Pam Allen one out of the Hedgehog Fibers. That was for myself. And then I also knit a tank, which is a garment. So that's 5 adult garments, 4 of which are full-on sleeved sweaters. And I have 2 on the needles right now that I'm sure I'm going to finish by the end of the year. Which, if I do, means I will have knit a full-on adult garment, not even counting the tank, but a full-on sweater. That'll be 6 adult sweaters for the year, which means 1 for every 2 months, which I think is like a pretty impressive rate. I had never completed an adult sweater before this year. I had done a different adult tank top, and I'd done an adult sweater vest, and I'd done children's sweaters, but I'd never done an adult sweater. And if I've done 1 every 2 months, I think that's a fairly impressive pace. And honestly, I think I could knit more of them, like if I made sweaters more of a priority. So yeah, I think next year I would like to have a goal to knit at least 6 again. You know, and maybe I'll do more. I don't want to overwhelm myself and set goals that I can't reach, but I think another 6 adult sweaters is a pretty reasonable goal for me to set for myself next year. And when I think of it that way, I realize, like, wow, I'm actually knitting a lot of sweaters. I'm actually kind of turning into a sweater knitter, which is cool because I really get more excited about sweaters than just about anything else, you know, because they're clothes and I love clothes. So it's pretty exciting. Anyway, now I feel like I have been rambling a whole lot, and I think that's because I don't have any on the horizon or stash enhancement to share with you, so I feel like I can ramble without going over time. But I shouldn't do that. I should keep stuff, you know, more coherent. I'm a little out of practice. It's been 2 weeks. And I'm going to have to learn to not use that as an excuse if we're going to have this new schedule. Anyway, I'm just going to move on to chit chat and talk real briefly about Vlogtober before I let you guys go. So I'm going to work on my pavement while we do that. So as I have mentioned several times, I'm doing Vlogtober, and on the last podcast, you know, I think I mentioned that I was really nervous about like whether people would like it, or whether like daily vlogs would be too much and it was gonna like clutter up people's feed, and I don't know, I had a lot of nervousness around it. Not so much around the idea of can I film every day and get it uploaded, which I think a lot of other people have that worry. My worry was more like, are people gonna like this? Are they gonna want to watch this? And you guys have really overwhelmed me with a positive response, and I just want to say thank you for that so much. Like, everyone, there's something that's so nice about vlogging every day, because every day I get comments from you guys, and I have met other podcasters that I wasn't watching before because they're also doing a Vlogtober, and so we kind of found each other and we're supporting each other and watching each other's vlogs now, which is really cool. So it's like I've met these new people, I've gotten comments from them and from other viewers, and I get that feedback every day, and so it's sort of intensified the feeling of being in this community, which is just really, really, really nice. So, you know, I just want to thank you guys for encouraging me and for being there and being so cool. And I also want to let you know about the other knitters that are doing Vlogtober that I have been watching. So I have discovered Nordic Stitches, Little Drops of Wonderful, and Alternate Universe, and they are all doing Vlogtober. So I'm going to put the names of those podcasts in my show notes under Chit Chat, but you can also find them if you go to my channel here on YouTube and look up like the podcasts, the channels that I'm subscribed to, they should be listed under there as well. So you can directly link to them that way. But Nordic Stitches is in Norway, and she knits a square onto her Cozy Memories blanket with a different featured yarn every day for Vlogtober, which is a really cool feature. And she's just really neat. She has lots of neat footage of what it looks like where she lives in northern Norway, which looks totally different than where I live, so I enjoy that a lot. Little Drops of Wonderful is a British knitter and crocheter, and so that's really fun for me because I'm not a big crocheter at all. So it's fun to see the different possibilities of what you can do with crochet. Like, she's working on a really cool sweater right now that has like floral lace details, and then it has this thing called crochet seed stitch that actually looks a lot like knitted seed stitch. So that's really interesting for me to get to see, and she also just has such a really, really cool personality. I think she's a lot of fun. I love watching her. And then I've also been watching Alternate Universe, which is following a girl who actually owns a yarn store in, I think, Bristol. So that is really cool because her yarn store is like, it's awesome to see the ins and outs of that. And she's also like an artist, and she makes different like note cards and stuff that she sells in the store, which is really cool. God, the lighting has gotten atrocious. You would think it was nighttime with how dark it is right now, but it's not. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I gotta figure this out. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, I lost my point of my thought point. I lost my thought point. Train of thought. That's what I was trying to say. Lost my train of thought. But I recommend all of those channels. I can't necessarily speak to their podcasts yet because I haven't had a chance to watch full episodes yet, but the Vlogtober stuff is great. So if you're enjoying my Vlogtober and you want to see more Vlogtober from knitters, check those out. I don't need to tell you, you probably already know, but Kristen of Yarngasm is also doing Vlogtober. So I've been watching that as well. And I'm sure there are others. So let me know if you know of more in the down bar. Not in the down bar. That'd be weird if you could access the down bar. In the comments. My brain is mush right now, you guys. I'm sorry. I've been doing homework all weekend and working all week. So I'm just like very out of it. Yeah. So I guess that's all I have to share with you guys right now. I should have mentioned at the top of the episode, but if you haven't seen last episode and you're wondering why I'm wearing a knitted witch cap, I don't know that I can explain to you the why other than it's awesome, but I can tell you that it is a pattern by Kate Oates called Bewitched, and you can find it on my project page on Ravelry as well. So, supposed to say that at the top of the episode, only 48 minutes late. Good job, Celeste. Hopefully I will have edited this down to more like 40 because I feel like I've rambled a lot. And yeah, and now I'm gonna stop. Now I'm gonna shut up. Okay, so thanks so much for watching again. Give this video a thumbs up if you have managed to make it through my rambling and enjoy the podcast. It helps other people find me, so I appreciate it a whole lot. And check out Vlogtober if you haven't yet. And happy knitting. I hope you're having a beautiful October wherever you are. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.